Columbia Alumni Radio.
All
Um,
right.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Matt Mireles. I'm the host of this thing, and I'm here today with my friend Michael Charley.
Hey, everybody.
Let's see here. Let's see how this works. Um, all right. So Michael, how's it going, man? It looks like you are in a warehouse or converted apartment of some sort with
Now, this
many
is
boxes.
this is our office, but this is what an office looks like when you get back from a music festival at midnight and you don't want to organize anything, so you just dump everything in the middle of the room. So that's the current state of affairs. Which cleaning it up is the next on the agenda item after this.
That's awesome. So uh so just real quick before we kind of dive in, you it sounds like you're just at a festival. Give the basic Sunski pitch. Who are you? What do you guys do? What makes you guys special? And for someone who doesn't know anything about what you guys are doing.
Got it. Well, Sunski is my business. I co-founded it with my business partner Tom Stewart about 3 years ago, and we really the core of what Sunski does is that we make really nice, high quality, affordable, and stylish eyewear. It all has a lifetime warranty, and it all sort of appeals to the new, younger, less stuffy demographic. And really, we're all about helping sort of urban adventurers get outside. It's a brand that really resonates with our passions, and so we're able to really successfully just sort of tackle this niche by being super authentic with everything that we do. And we've sort of just been doing this from the heart for the last 3 years, and we've been starting to gain traction. So we've actually started to see quite a bit of success simply from doing what we love.
That's awesome, man. So you know, it still very much looks like a startup. It probably was even more like a startup at some point. What's the what's the backstory? Tell us, like, how did this thing come about? Well, that's an awesome pitch. How'd you guys get here?
Yeah. I think actually in terms of laying out like a cohesive story, Sunsky is a great case study simply because we had an unbelievably incremental approach to where we are today. Um, this story essentially starts in a lot of places, but we do have an office, we do have employees, we do usually have a nice clean conference area where we can have meetings in on our large whiteboard. But at the moment, it does feel like living out of a house. But this story starts in before an office. There was a living room of the apartment that Tom and I shared together. And before the living room, there was Tom and I working remotely in the evening times, moonlighting from our day jobs, him in Switzerland and me in Boston. And that, I think, is where the story truly begins. How detailed of a breakdown do you want? Because this is about 3 years of the content I can relay.
Yeah, man, go for it, dude. I love it. It sounds awesome.
All right, so Tom and I were the class of 2009 from Columbia College, and we both had great ambitions. He wanted to be an architect, and I wanted to be a consultant. And we were essentially interviewing with businesses in October or November of 2008, and I was preparing for interviews with Lehman Brothers when they were literally shutting their doors. And so it just the plan that you make through college for what's going to happen after college just did not come to fruition at all for I don't think anybody. But Tom was the guy that ended up on the same life raft as I did, and we sort of just found whatever we could do. So Tom actually landed an internship in Switzerland, and I was working for a social networking startup in Boston. I was a content moderator, which was a glorified way to say that I was deleting pornography all day long. It was pretty menial, terrible. I mean, that aspect of the job was pretty tough. And so we both thought that there could be something better for us out there. And it didn't take long before Tom and I sort of decided that maybe going into business with ourselves would be the best way to create the life that we wanted to live, because we had tried to apply for that life and got rejected, and so we decided to create it instead. Um, that was when we started working evenings. I would go to work from 9 a.m. to 6 or 7, and then from 7 o'clock to midnight, I would just be working a second job, and I did that for a year. It was basically just Tom and I on Skype and on GChat, essentially trying to build one of the most ridiculous products that I still to this day think is the best design product we've ever created, which was the Salsa Bowl. It was a ceramic bowl with a lip that came up concave back over the bowl, so when you scooped your chip up the high side of the bowl, it pushed your salsa back onto the chip.
Dude, I've so wanted that. That's awesome.
I still got a couple left, so I'll send one to you for sure.
Count me in, man. Count me in. That's awesome.
So that was the idea. It was this sort of Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week inspired, like, look, we're just going to make this one thing, and we're going to do it really well, and we're going to sell millions of them and make millions of dollars. Obviously, life is what happens when you're busy making plans. So we started with the Salsa Bowl, and we actually ended up. We both went full time way earlier than I think most people would consider going full time for a business. I mean, this is the business where we had $270 in the bank account one quarter, and we were like, hey, we're solvent. To most businesses, I think that's usually it's time to fold. But no one told us when to quit, or we never learned how to quit, so we didn't. And so essentially what happened was Tom and I convinced Tom to move out to San Francisco, and we lived together, and we had our own separate bedrooms, and then the living room just had a pretty much permanent desk setup that we would work on the Salsa Bowl. And we did that for almost a year until it was very difficult to make money with a low margin product like that.
Wait, now hold on a sec. Let me stop you right there. So let me get this straight. You guys both went to Columbia, Ivy League graduates, and all the attendant sort of expectations and things that they fill your head with. There, you end up basically being the guy who deletes porn from a social networking startup. Was this like Facebook? What was the social networking startup?
It was actually pretty clever. It was a social network that was essentially developed for feature phones that were not smartphones. It was an underserved market that didn't have a lot of. Facebook was not targeting them. MySpace had kind of missed them. So that there's a demographic of people that didn't have smartphones but wanted to be connected, and so that was the audience.
What was it called?
This was called Moco Space. I think they're still around.
Moco Space. Okay. And I'm just, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but how much were you getting paid by Moco Space to be their porn deleter?
When I started, I think I was making about $11 or $12 an hour. But it was a job, which, this is the Great Recession. You had a job, so that's all that really matters.
So you're deleting porn all day, and Tom is now an intern with a consulting group, or
Tom was an intern at he had basically an internship at a Swiss university with their robotics architecture lab. So it was pretty cerebral stuff, but again, it was simply an internship when we all wanted careers. We had just done 4 years of internships.
Right. Okay. So now, you guys are interning, the super intern and the porn deleter, and then it occurs to you guys to leave these jobs, which for reasons that I think I can understand. And now, walk me through the timeline here, just to where we are now. So when did you quit? When did you stop deleting porn for a living?
So I left that job in 2010. It would be April. No, maybe May. One of those months, just before the summer started. I basically quit that job, and I moved down to Philadelphia to live with Tom in his childhood bedroom in South Philly, to the point where we had such tiny accommodations that he had his single bed in his childhood bedroom, then I had a single mattress, blow up mattress, that would be stacked up against the wall, and then at bedtime I would put it down in an L shape to the base of his bed. But this is in a small room. Once my bed was down, you couldn't open the door to get out to use the bathroom or anything. This is how tight our quarters were. I
And
lived
this
there for a summer.
and this was his parents'
This
house.
is his parents' house. Yep, exactly.
All right, so living the recession lifestyle back with the parents in Philly. Um, and you guys are the salsa bowl guys at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and this is, did I catch that? Spring 2010?
This would be, yeah, 2010 is when it all all began. Um, and it's going into the hot, muggy Philly summer of 2010, and we are literally just learning from scratch everything. It's, how do you manufacture ceramics? Who do we know who can tell us how to manufacture ceramics? Who do we talk to who has a contact who might know someone else who knows someone else? And so through just simply putting ourselves out there and putting our needs out there, and fortunately being able to convince some people of the Salsable vision, we're able to line up some manufacturing contacts that help us get prototypes, and line us up with a sourcing agency that can start making the Salsable from a sketch on a napkin to a physical product. And you
Nice.
end up with
That was a hot summer, by the way. I was actually about, I don't know, maybe it's 200 miles to the west of you that summer in Pittsburgh, living in a slightly less cramped, but I was living with two guys. With two other guys in a 2-bedroom apartment in Pittsburgh, working on my first startup, Speaker Text. And I remember that was very hot summer because we didn't have air conditioning, and we would try to do calls with investors, but we didn't have like a headset or anything. And so we didn't have a phone, so we had to use Skype. And I had kind of this like crappy older MacBook. And so like the speaker's really, really tiny. So you'd have to like put your kind of head down to try to like talk to them. And then across the street, there was a gas station. And I guess in Pittsburgh, motorcycle gangs are a big thing. So there would be like, these guys on Harleys who'd come by, like, 20 of them, revving the engines, going around the fucking block. And we'd be on the phone trying to talk to investors, and we'd often be Skyping. So, it would be video. And
you have to hold your composure.
You have to hold your composure. And we'd have to lower the windows because we'd have to have the phone call. So we'd just get baking hot. And I remember we'd switch off, because when we switch off, like as soon as you got out of the video view, you'd take your shirt off, because it was so freaking hot.
Yeah, that's one of the first life lessons for entrepreneurs, is how to exit a video call without showing that you're not wearing any pants.
Yes, absolutely, my friend. Yeah, that was a very hot summer. So, all right, okay, we derailed here. So you got some manufacturers in the salsa bowl business lined up who are interested and want to work with these young, budding, brilliant businessmen.
Yeah, and so we figure out how much it's going to cost, which is like, I think our first production run was going to be $15,000, and so we scrape together all of our pennies, and we go and we find some major investors who invest like between $1,500 and $1,800 each in this endeavor, and we make our first run of salsa bowls, and we don't have any place to put them in Philly, so Tom's grandfather has a basically like little workshop garage thing out on the Jersey Shore. And so we have our first tiny little production run delivered to the doorstop of this house, and I just remember sitting on the doorstop for 3 days, because this is shipping, this is ocean multimodal containers. Like, it's not like UPS next day air where they're going to come between 10 and 2. It takes a little bit of time, and so we're not a warehouse. We don't have a warehouse stock. We just have to sit there, and we just sit on this stoop for 3 days waiting for these bowls to show up. And they finally do, and they're delivered, and we have them. And 40% of them are deformed or defective to the point where we're not going to be able to sell them.
Ouch.
There's this moment where we they unload the pallets, and we've just trucked all these pallets up a second story flight of stairs into the attic of this little workshop, and we rip one of them open, and I look inside and we pull it out, and it's in this white box with no packaging, because we had never even considered what packaging would be like, and it's just gotten made in China stamped in like impact fonts and 48 points high on the side of the box. They rip this thing open, and it's just this rather oddly shaped bowl. It was just not going to fly to our quality control standards. Um, and so thus began the long saga of retouching, reboxing, and sorting every single piece of product that we had, all 3,000 of them in this hot attic. Uh, but, we had these bowls, and the next question was, how do we sell them? Like, honestly, how do we sell them? I have no idea. So I built a website for the salsa bowl, and you just put them up on the internet, and you learn the second rule of entrepreneurship after not wearing pants is you can't just fart anything out on the internet and expect people to buy it. Um, so that was the second struggle. I mean, like just getting the product made to a point where you have something physical in your hands was a incredible learning experience, and it was a chapter that we had. It's like you read the first couple pages of the chapter, and then you skip to the end, and like, I know that one. So that's about the amount of information that we had covered in that little segment, and now we're just skipping ahead to chapter 2, which is all right. So you've got something that vaguely resembles your vision. How do we sell it? And so that involved learning how to code a website and putting that up on the internet, and then emailing your friends saying, hey, does anybody know anyone that wants to buy one of these? Go to salsabowl.com, which is still in existence. You can see what it's like version 3 or 4 at this point of our website, but it's one of the very early masterpieces that I was able to create. And so that in itself was also a struggle with selling the salsa bowl, but just through dedication, I mean persistence, really, an absolute enormous amount of persistence to get anybody considering buying these bowls was required, and we were actually selling quite a few bowls. I mean, we had to order more production runs of them. We ended up kind of getting the QC a little bit under control and ordering full containers of salsa bowls. We're talking like a 20-foot container that's 15 feet high, and getting these things, shipped into a warehouse that we'd finally set up that was fulfilling our orders. And we were in some retail stores, some mom and pop ones, and we realized that the writing was on the wall when we finally landed Williams-Sonoma, and Williams-Sonoma was going to start carrying the salsa bowl. We were in talks with them, and the problem is that, like I said right at the beginning, margins are very important when you're in the consumer product business, and so we were selling these bowls for $16 a piece, and they cost us like $4 or $5 to make and another couple bucks to land them. And so Williams-Sonoma wanted to buy them for less than what it cost us to make them. Or maybe I think we might have had like a couple cent profit margin. I was just doing the math in my head. It's like, okay, if we move 1 million bowls, I might be able to pay rent this year. Like that was the best case scenario, and that's when we kind of realized we had some trouble. That and one of my favorite mistakes I've ever made was kind of a death knell for the salsa bowl dream was when one of our major catalogs wanted to refresh the bowl to put it in for another year, because retail world, you always have to have something new every single season. So they wanted to make a chip and dip set. So we made a platter to go along with the salsa bowl, and this plate was extremely expensive to manufacture. It was very nice. This big, heavy bamboo plate. And we wanted to make the bare minimum, but like shipping containers across the ocean is really expensive. So we wanted to also be efficient with it. So I remember this email comes in from the manufacturer, and we're ordering like 1,200 of these bowls because that's how many the catalog says they need. And our manufacturer says that the container can hold like 1,800. So we were like, okay, so we up our order by like 800 more plates. And then the container arrives to our warehouse, and the warehouse guy's like, yeah, we're looking for the container. I'm like, yeah, it should be a 20-foot container. There's a couple standard sizes for containers. They're like 20 feet, 40 feet, and then some awkward sizes. And I'm saying, look for the 20-foot container. It should be out there. The trucker literally just called me. So he's at this, like, I don't see anything but a 40-foot container on the end of a truck. I'm like, wait, a what? Yeah, one 40-foot truck sitting in the parking lot. Like, oh my God. turns out that the cutoff for loading a container is like 1,150 units, and we needed 1,200. And I had just misinterpreted a single line of a single email and ended up ordering like $25,000 worth of inventory that we didn't need and couldn't sell. Um, and that was when we kind of went very cash shy. The business was the airplane was sort of coming at the ground really quickly, and we always call it you're scraping the tail when you're trying to pull back up, but you just barely scraping along with a couple $100 in the bank account at that time. And that was how Sunski was born. It was in that moment of do or die desperation where we had maybe a month and a half left of rent and ramen saved up, and absolutely no plans for, like, not even enough rent money saved up to be able to look for a job to start paying your next month's rent. It was kind of just like, we do this now or we die sort of thing. And so during this whole time when Tom and I were living out of his parents' house in Philly, and we'd in this story frame, we had moved to San Francisco because it's where I had grown up, and we wanted to live the dream. I wanted to be able to ski, and Tom wanted to be able to surf, and there's not a lot of places in the U.S. where you can do that in the same urban location. San Francisco is one of them. So
what time frame are we talking about? Like, what year is this?
So this is actually, I mean, it's actually a pretty compact story. So Tom and I lived in Philly in through September, that summer of 2010. And then in September, I moved back to my parents' house in San Francisco. And Tom actually, it was a nice time. There wasn't a lot going on. We had been selling salsables out of this warehouse. Tom had gone on a surf trip through Australia. And he had come back, and he had these cool sunglasses that he had bought at a thrift store on the beach. And we actually first moved to Tahoe in January, and we lived there during the 800-inch season because, we're trying to live the dream. So we'd been working out of just this little shack in Tahoe, working on the salsa bowl, and we'd wake up in the morning, answer emails, go skiing for like 6 hours, and come back and work in the evening. We'd go to the Red Box and rent like Piranha 3D for the third time because you'd watch a movie every night, and we watch a movie and go to bed and then go skiing. It was a great, simple time. Poor and simple time, but we're doing exactly what we wanted to be doing. And then that after that season hit in 2011, it was like April or May, we moved into an apartment together in San Francisco, and that's when we were living out of the living room. That's when I was making these mistakes about ordering too many salsa bowl plates, and we actually lived there for a year working on the salsa bowl and just barely scraping by. And it was the spring of 2012 when the airplane was coming in with no fuel, and we were just gonna crash land on and burst into flames. And for like the last 2 years, Tom had just been sitting on these kind of fun-looking neon-colored sunglasses that he'd just been wearing around town, and had a couple extra pairs in a bag. And so many people thought that they were cool. They were like, you know what? Salsa Bowl's not working. It's just the margins aren't there. We love Tom and I love being outside. I mean, that's one of our huge hobbies and passions, is just skiing and surfing and hiking and just getting out there and after it. And we kind of realized that this is what we wanted to do, but we couldn't really translate this marketing through the Salsa Bowl because it was for like middle-aged housewives, essentially, was the demographic that we were trying to sell to. And we'd be trying to do things like Salsa Bowl, you can have a picnic outside in the sun. And so we're trying to tie it to some charitable causes, so we're donating to through 1% for the planet, and we're trying to get all this environmental stuff on board, and it's just not really resonating with anyone because it's like a serving platter, not,
right.
Not something cool. And so there's just sort of a click, and Tom had been saying like, hey, these sunglasses are cool, there might be something here. And I'm just thinking, yeah, but like the Salsa Bowl is here, and we've got a lot of them. So like
we have so much salsa ball right now. We've got to sell the shit out of these things.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
We got a big problem. We can't just abandon this. We're so deep in the hole. And it's like, no, we got to just try this. And so I finally agreed, and it's kind of amazing, when something is going to be a success simply from how naturally it all comes. And we just started thinking, like, how are we going to position these sunglasses? How are we going to market them? Who's the customer? It's like, the customer is us. And the customer loves what we love. And we're just going to make exactly what we want, and we're going to find people like us, and we're going to sell it to them. and we're going to pitch it in a way that we like, and then since we're finding people who are like us, those people are going to like it. And so that was essentially the tactic that we took for our Kickstarter campaign and for our marketing slant. And we thought that we thought we might sell a couple hundred pairs of glasses to friends and friends of friends, and just enough to get. I mean, look, like, we were not trying to start a business. We were trying to make a couple more months worth of rent so that we could look for real jobs and get out of this stinking ship that we kind of built for ourselves. And we since we had all the manufacturing contacts set up and everything, this was just we could do one off almost out of this with not a lot of overhead. But what ended up happening is we put this on Kickstarter, and it just struck a nerve. I mean, this was the timing was right, the platform was right, the message was right, the audience was right, and we sold like 10,000 sunglasses. And we just kind of took a step back and was like, whoa, we have found something here that is more than what we thought it was. I think that this deserves a little bit more of our attention. And that was essentially the birth of Sunski. If the trajectory of our business was kind of salsable, just sort of doing this, Sunski and that Kickstarter campaign sort of jumped us up an order of magnitude in terms of relevance and importance and budget, and that was really the birth of this brand, which is now taken on sort of a life of its own outside of Tom and my's efforts.
And so how many salsa bowls were you guys selling a month back in those days?
I think we were probably selling about 150 to 300 bowls a month, at like an average price of like $11 a bowl. So we were making a couple $1,000s a month, which was rent and ramen. And we'd get really excited when like a $6,000 order would come in, because that would mean that we could pay rent for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And then this Kickstarter campaign comes through with like $150,000, and just like, what? This? Can't believe it.
And so you're selling salsa bowls for $11 a pop. And then how much are you selling these sunglasses for?
We're selling sunglasses for about $30. They had pretty nice packaging. They're all polarized. We were using the same polycarbonate formulation, so they're pretty durable. And for all intents and purposes, it was a great deal. I mean, you couldn't really get branded sunglasses for that price outside of Costco. Kirkland Signature is your brand, and no one else was really doing it. So we sort of created a niche market that hadn't existed before.
And how much, if you can share, if you can, I totally understand. How much did it cost you to make these $30 sunglasses?
The margins are confidential, but what I will say is that the people who are making $150 sunglasses are making an enormous amount of money. That is straight markup, not any super expensive manufacturing process that's twice as expensive as ours.
Yeah, no, I mean 30 bones for a good pair of sunglasses, that's totally reasonable. Like, I'm thinking, if I go to Marshall's or something and like pick up a pair of sunglasses, if you ever need to buy running shoes, by the way, or running shorts, go to Marshall's. Great spot. And they occasionally also have sunglasses as well. That's how much you're paying, maybe 20 to 45. So, all right. So legit, like affordable sunglasses, not the cheapy knockoffs that you're going to get from the dude on the street, but affordable quality branded sunglasses for $30 a pop. And sounds like probably better margins than your salsa bowl business.
Yes, we were making decent margins. We were moving volume, which is also important. And the reason why it succeeded was because we had the timing right. Like, the world was ready for this. For people were ready for sunglasses. The technology was right, so that we could be a small brand. We could just go in and make sunglasses. I mean, like 10 years ago, this would have been impossible. But now there's enough infrastructure supporting small to medium-sized manufacturing businesses that we had the capability of producing this product. And then there's this shift that's been going on, especially in the outdoor industry, and especially among sort of like the millennial younger generation that we were targeting, which is that um, we are constantly bombarded by thousands and thousands of different products every single day, from the retargeting ads you're getting served on Amazon, to just your keyword searches, to when you're checking your email or you're watching an ad before you're trying to watch a cat video. I mean, like, you might be trying to watch a funny advertisement and you're watching an ad through that advertisement. I mean, it's like there's no end to the amount of merchandising that's done to people, because advertising is the only successful internet model that's ever really been proven as of yet. And I think our generation is extremely good at recognizing bullshit, and everybody wants something that actually means something to them. And so we told a story with these glasses. I mean, and it was an authentic story. So people would try to sniff around for a fake, and it just wasn't there. It was Tom. You dig and dig and dig, and you find Tom on a surfboard on the west coast of Australia, living out of a tent. Like that. It's entirely true. And the sentimentality that we were able to imbue these products with was something that I think we now see industries moving in this direction, in retail industry moving in this direction. But it was that we sold a product, but we also, it's fashion. Like, people want it to mean something, and we sold an authentic story at a good price to people who would appreciate it. And that's the nerve that we struck, and that's why it succeeded at the way that it did. And that was sort of the form. It's like, look, like, we got to just keep making good stuff at a reasonable price with a fully authentic and awesome story behind them. And that's really been the formula that Sunski has just used since that little Kickstarter campaign to, millions of dollars a year in sales.
And so I just want to step back for a second. You said something I thought was really interesting. You said, you couldn't have done this 10 years ago. So then there's now, this like manufacturing infrastructure that's available for small and medium-sized businesses that just didn't exist. That sounds really interesting. Talk to me about that. Like, what's the story there?
I mean, obviously the internet, is something that is fantastic and enables a lot, especially when you've got, obviously in 2005, people had the ability to communicate with China. People were definitely emailing their reps over there and checking on the status of things, and they would send pictures back and whatnot. But there was nothing really set up to be accessible to the end user in the way that we now have. It's things like freight forwarders would not have thought to be consolidating less than container loads with small businesses, because how would they advertise that? How are they even going to get those small businesses to work with them? Like, how do you even advertise the fact that you provide this service? People I mean, that's the
So
reason
like,
why.
what websites are we talking about here? Like,
We're not. I don't think we're talking about websites, because it's not like you can just go on, make something in China. I mean, there might be something like that, but I haven't found anyone who's had success with it. You can't. It's all still extremely relationship based. Like, this entire process is about relationships and reputation. If a company loses your container over the side of a boat and doesn't take steps to make that right, like, everybody in the industry knows about it and they lose business. Like, there's not enough players to have some like crazy commoditized like Yelp for factories, which may someday come out to be, but we'll probably have 3D printing before that. But what it really is it's that all these companies sort of realize that there's markets outside of like the major players that they've been working with, and so some they're oriented towards being able to serve smaller clients, which is not. I mean, you would never be able to place an $8,000 salsable order until very recently, because what shipping company even cares to move that product from the factory to the port, and then what ocean freight company is going to care to figure out how do we bundle this with other product into a container and move it across the ocean. And so that's sort of what I'm talking about. I mean, it might not be like you couldn't have done this 10 years ago, but you definitely couldn't have done it 15 years ago. and so I think it takes time for industries to sort of adapt to new technology, and so we're now seeing much more of what we're doing in the outdoor industry and in the retail industries. You're seeing a lot more smaller independent brands that are able to sort of the other thing I think, and I think actually now that I'm thinking about it, one of the most important things is not so much the fact that these companies exist to service us, but that you can do it with such little overhead. I mean, is for the first 2.5 years, it was only Tom and I, and the amount of sort of software as a service um, applications that run over the internet that you can use, the accounting software, task management, like this would require 15 people and 10 secretaries, you know, before all these new, you got customer support and a dashboard that you can just work on 1 to 2 hours at a time, as opposed to like answering letters or even answering emails, which we found just didn't work because your inbox is now who are you talking to? Is it a customer, a retailer, just some random guy off the street? And so I think also it allowed Tom and I to sort of be able to be the ramen startup guys, like living month to month while also running a fairly sophisticated organization from a logistics standpoint. You've got 10 time zones and 10,000 miles separating you from your manufacturer, and yet you're able to stay on top of that in addition to like run a entire multimedia marketing package to your end customer and keep those customers satisfied and ensure that the warehouse is getting their products to them on time. And it's that I think is, people can do so much more now with so much less than I imagine they had to work with even a decade ago. And I think that's really the key to why businesses like ours can exist now.
And so if someone, I'm sure there's people in the audience who have dreams like this, who think like, man, I'd love to do this. If someone's starting off today, like what are the tools, what are the resources? I mean, you guys had to go from 0 to 1 here. Like what did you like call your rich uncle? Like what was the first step you guys took? Or what was if not the first step, what was the first productive step? I'm sure you guys had a lot of wasted ones too.
But they're not wasted because they teach you what not to do. I mean, that's one of the things, is that you're going to screw it all up, and that is just it. So really, I think the most important thing that you can do is you can find someone who's already screwed up a lot of them, and they can tell you, if at least not what to do, they can tell you what not to do. But that was literally our first productive step. Our first productive step was Tom calling, talking to his parents, talking to his friends, and just saying like, do you know anybody who can make anything? Do you know anybody who makes things? Because you don't even know the vocabulary they need to be using. It's just like, how do you make things? And it's like, well, you should talk to Fred. He makes mugs. Okay, well, let's go call Fred. And then we set up a meeting with Fred. And Fred's been working in China for 40 years. And it's I mean, there's people all around you who can help you, and you just don't know it because you don't know what questions to ask, or you don't even know of their existence. And so I think one of the best exercises that Tom and I did right off the bat was we literally made a list of every single person that we knew, and then tried to sort that list into who of these people are doing things that may be relevant, or they may have information, or they may be able to help us, and then you just start using that list every time you hit a wall, and it's like, who do we know who might be able to introduce us to someone who can solve our problem, or help point us in the right direction, or introduce us to someone else who can solve our problem. And you do that long enough, and you build a pretty big Rolodex of resources. And it's not resources like cash. We've bootstrapped our company to this day. It's resources, which is information, which is at the end of the day the most important resource you can really get your hands on as a business owner.
But it sounds like even more than information, it's relationships. It sounds like what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not about, I'm trying to make it not sound like, it's like step one, don't be poor. That's not how to do it. It is relationships, and it's honestness in those relationships. It's earnestness. We didn't know anybody really. We had our college peers, and then our parents, who had really, they were not captains of industry or anything. They just knew people who were older, and so those people who are older know people who have been around longer, and they just know more people, and so you just you just approach these people and you have a clear mission and a clear eagerness to understand. I think that I find this actually in a lot of things is that everybody wants to share what they know for the most part. Just because it's either pride or this desire to have this sort of like almost apprenticeship drive to pass on your wisdom. Maybe this has been instinctually ingrained in humans since the dawn of our species, is to just pass along information because that's what got us here. And so people are just remarkably eager to share information. I mean, they might not be like, oh yeah, and I'll also give you some money to do that, but they'll be like, hey, like let me tell you what I know. And that's what we found was the most valuable thing.
That's awesome. I it's it's interesting too because you know that's definitely very much how Silicon Valley works, and I've always wondered to what extent that's true outside of the valley. Like here, like I'm talking to you literally, from my home office slash garage in Menlo Park, California. Stanford's like half a mile away from me. Um, but I feel like this place is so special because people are so willing to sort of like go out on a limb and take a flyer and take a meeting with some like random person who, for all intents and purposes, is probably a waste of your time or might not, do anything or go anywhere. But sometimes those people are amazing, and for me, I feel like I've been so helped by so many people, sort of paying it forward that it's now instinctual. It's now something I feel like I owe it to people. I owe it to the world to sort of pay it forward in the way that I was helped. And I've always wondered how much that's true in other industries, because I feel like this place is special, but it's not completely unique. Like these are still fundamental human urges to share information, to tell our story, to be the expert. There's vanity in that. It's cool to be the guy that someone's looking up to. Now that you guys are based in San Francisco, have you noticed that the vibe is different at all? Do you see this like varying from geography to geography? How do you think about that?
So, I mean, just to answer your question of does this happen outside of Silicon Valley? I mean, to give a little bit of context, our first meetings about how to manufacture were in South Philly. It's about as far as you can get from Silicon Valley, and we were encountering people who were full of information and willing to help and knew exactly what to do. So, I truly think that no matter where you are, you're going to be able to muster the resources within your community to get you to where you need to be. I mean, it might be that you need to meet someone who's outside your immediate. If you're in York, Nebraska, you might need to meet someone who's outside of York, Nebraska, but there's going to be someone nearby you who's going to be able to point you in the right direction. So there's really no excuses why you can't find the information that you need. As far as to answer your question about being in San Francisco, I think it's actually a really interesting thing for our brand to be here, because we are an outdoor brand and we are not a technology brand. We don't really benefit from technology. We are at the heart of, like 50% of all venture capital in the world comes through Silicon Valley, and we are bootstrapped entirely. And quite frankly, we moved here because I wanted to be close to the mountains and Tom wanted to be close to the beach. Full stop. And we wanted to be in an urban area. I mean, like that's the beginning and the end. There's no considerations made to like, the startup friendly environment that's here. And what we've actually found is that it may be almost not a hindrance, but it's certainly not a help, because we find that we're not using the resources that are available here as much as we are. This is a difficult concept to enunciate, but I'm going to try. It's that you're almost overshadowed by the startup culture, by being a startup here, and it almost works to your detriment, which is that it is not special. What you're doing is not special, and you know, you're just rather unremarkable, as opposed to I can imagine being in other areas where, you know, being a startup would be cool and you would be able to uniquely stand out, either in your marketing or your ability to get help or muster resources. Whereas here, you're just, I mean, it's almost a foregone conclusion that you're a small business in San Francisco, you know, trying to do the thing. And so what we've actually had to do is we've had to sort of carve out, especially being a product design company and a retail-oriented company in the land of the internet. You know, we sell things, physical things for money. You know, it's a new concept in some ways for the area. And I'm saying this, you know, coming from having worked at Facebook and having worked at you know, other social networking startups for like my whole life essentially. So it's interesting to be able to juxtapose those things mentally in my head. But what we've had to do is we've had to sort of carve out a new niche here, and Sunski has actually been rather instrumental in sort of building a new community of retail-oriented outdoor industry businesses that just happen to be in the Bay Area. And there's a lot. And so we do an industry party every year called Outdoor San Francisco. And we invite people and we invite businesses, and we have other businesses that are working alongside us to throw this. And it's just a way that the Bay Area is getting a lot of outdoor companies now, and we're having to kind of find that it's really important to know that, because it's this niche within a larger startup ocean, basically, that most of the time doesn't apply to what retail. I mean, this is very industry specific. So this is my own personal experiences with running an outdoor retail company. It's that the way that you grow an outdoor retail company is very different from the way you grow a technology company. You know, we're about incremental growth as opposed to, you know, long incubation with high overhead and high staffing costs, and then an explosion into, you know, a 200x growth for several years and then an acquisition. Like that's not how in retail industry
and
works.
Just curious, why do this inside industry stuff? Why does it help your business, or does it help your business to have these relationships with ostensibly competitors? Like why? I think a lot of owners would say, hey, I just want to sell. I just want to be about me and do my thing. But you're saying, hey, we want to be at the center of a movement, and you know, that's valuable for us, or at least it's interesting for us. Why do you guys do that? What's like the strategic logic there?
No, it's extremely valuable, actually. It probably is directly attributable to an enormous amount of our success. Now, maybe like the plurality of our success is simply due to what can really be just defined as an extension or an extrapolation of how we started, which is seeking out people who know information and making sure that you maintain those relationships. We do not. I mean, we are partnered with businesses on the same scale as us, you know, in a couple percentage points up and down. And what we find is that when we share information, our whole is greater than the sum of our contributions. Several small companies can band together and accomplish something because they're able to combine their own unique customer groups, their own resources, their own niches that they have specialty in, and then you can combine to create like a marketing campaign or a party or an event or a co-branded product line that can come out of literally nowhere. And each one can benefit way more than what they put in, but they can only benefit if everyone plays together. There's Tom in the background, if you guys are. You're on live air, Tom.
Oh my God. Where's the cutting board?
The cutting board?
Yeah.
Why do we need a cutting board?
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. I am worried about it now.
I got it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I got into this Twitter fight is too strong a term, but a Twitter
bicker.
discussion. A Twitter kerfluffle, let's call it, with someone who is talking about the lack of diversity in the technology industry. this person was an engineer, I believe, and they were saying like, hey, there's the odds, African American, the odds are stacked against us, and we don't. There's not enough people like us. We're isolated. I'm isolated. I don't fit in. I'm not like everyone else. And my advice to this person would say, hey, why don't you find people like you and create a community, your own community, just because you don't look like the sort of the dominant, group, or you just because your community doesn't have power, create a community and put yourself at the center of it. And in so doing, through banding together, you can get power, and together, as individuals, we don't have much, right? I mean, how we as a society, our power is in our civilization, is in our tools and what we can do together. Man alone is without tools is a pretty useless beast. But together, networked, with tools, I mean, there's almost infinite amounts that we can do and accomplish. This person didn't really appreciate that commentary, but I feel like this is the playbook. Like, there's all, for most people are going to feel like outsiders on some level. They're going to feel like they don't belong, for whatever reason. And it could be because you're doing a bootstrap physical products company in, like in San Francisco, where it's all tech startups going to, trying to be unicorns. It could be, like you're a woman who doesn't know how to code, who wants to do a startup. You could be an immigrant who doesn't speak English and, barely speaks English and is trying to make something. But and some of those challenges are a lot harder than others, and I don't want to downplay that, but I feel like this concept of creating community, of finding your tribe and banding together is so powerful. And I didn't know that story that's what you guys are doing, but I love to hear it, because it seems like that's something that's so replicable for anybody, who's trying to build something from scratch, who's trying to create a movement or make something that doesn't exist today. But what's your take on that? Is that something that is just unique to you guys, or is that something that a playbook that other people can apply in other situations that are similar but not the same?
I mean, I firmly believe that just not being afraid to ask for help is really the only, I mean, there's a lot of different traits that you're going to need, but like asking for help is one of the most important things. Or like the reason why people don't start things is because they don't know how to do them. Like there is no like would-be entrepreneur sitting on their couch going, man, I really wish I was, the first place in this industry or whatever. But I know exactly how to do it. I just wish I was there, but I'm not. It's like the people who are looking to get started can't because they don't know how. And that's just the first barrier. It's just like, what do I do? And that's a question that I've been confronted and still do to this day. I mean, I'm sitting here and I've got a S business trying to break into the M business category, and I've never done this before. And so it's not about, nobody knows until they ask, and no one knows until they figure it out. And so even now, I am still having to find the people who have the information and who have been there and made the mistakes and learn from them and say, what do I do now? What's your recommendation? Find someone else. What's your recommendation? Get all these recommendations, and then what you do as an individual, where you actually come in, is the ability to synthesize all the different strategies and say, well, I think that pick a couple elements from here and mix in that. I think this is going to be the best way forward. It might not be, and there's your mistake. Okay, that wasn't the best way forward. But the way that you got to that plan was from getting help from other people. And you're never going to get a plan that's going to be like, okay, you need to do this, and you need to do that, and then you need to, step one, steal underpants, step two, question mark, step three, profit. Like that's never, it's always the question marks you need to fill in, and that has to come from you. But it's going to be guided by the expertise of others. And so And so that is really, it can be things where like I'll be asking people who make soap, because even though they make soap, they still have to deal with supply chain problems, and they have just as valid ideas on warehousing. I was a mentor for a vibrator company at the Haas School of Business Startup Challenge, and they won.
That's awesome.
It's the knowledge is fungible. Like you need to think a little more laterally about how people can help you, other than like, oh my God, I can't continue knowing what to do because I haven't found a guy with a sunglasses business that does $10 million a year to tell me how to get my sunglasses business there. It's like, no, like you can go to, there's a lot of different answers to your questions, provided you know the right questions to ask.
Did you ever think of quitting? Did you or Tom? Did you ever think like seriously about just being like, okay, we're done. This is
that. I think the recession, without having, I was an economist in college, and you learn about opportunity costs in like Econ 101, which is the value of whatever resource if it was being used another way. In terms of humans, it's you can either work for Salsable and make no money, or you can go work for company XYZ and make this amount of money. The way that calculation worked out during the recession was such that you can either delete porn for $11 an hour, or you can be broke and enjoy your job at Salsable. Like, it's a pretty easy equation. I imagine to say someone graduating from the class of 2015 into a super hot market, from Stanford, it's like, well, do you want to be broke and bootstrap your own company, or do you want to just go work for Google at, a cool 120 G's opening salary with some units thrown in? I mean, so for me, no, because quitting, like, I was at least enjoying what I was doing. I was feeling challenged, and like, yeah, I was poor, but my alternatives were to be poor and not enjoy what I was doing, because I had already, engaged at that level with my first job. And now, luckily, we're at the point where, like, we enjoy what we're doing. We're also successful, so it's now the dream. So no, I mean, because there's always a grind. I mean, like, that's, anyone who started a business knows that if you don't think that you're going to pay your dues by just grinding away all day, every day, beating your head against the wall, like, there's never an easy path to success unless you get really, really lucky, and that's like, you might as well be playing the lotto if that's your plan. And so I can imagine that being in a really hot economy where there's a lot of different options, and you could see that you would succeed, you can constantly be comparing your career path to what you'd be doing if you had chosen a different option. I think that would be a lot more difficult, and I don't actually know how I would deal with a situation like that, where I could be put into my shoes, 6 years ago, but in today's economic climate.
Yeah, it's funny. So once upon a time, I used to fight forest fires. I dropped out of Berkeley twice, fought forest fires, was a paramedic, and then I went to Columbia and finished school there. But I remember this very, very vivid experience. I was almost called the hot shot crew. It's kind of like the Marine Corps of the firefighter.
Yeah.
And actually, that one wasn't based out of Tahoe, but I did another in Tahoe. Anyway, so we had this old school superintendent, the crew boss, and we're on this fire in central Washington. And there's, like several hundred people in this fire camp, and you can kind of freelance and find like a good spot to sleep. And all these other crews were sleeping in this big meadow, and we'd drive by, you'd work 16-hour days every day for like 14 days, 21 days straight. And this is like back-breaking labor. So you're really working hard. And then at the end of the day, okay, where are you going to spike out? We're going to camp out. And there's this meadow, and I would look and I would just sort of like drool, because it was, you could see this like soft grass, this like a pillow top of grass. And then we would not go to the meadow, and the meadow was like heaven, and all the other crews were the meadow, and we went to this gravel pit, and I was so pissed off. It was like the height of stupidity. Why in God's name would we sleep in the fucking gravel pit? This is horrible. Is rocks. And then about halfway into our assignment, we got helicoptered into the backcountry. There's been like a helicopter crash and we had to do like body retrieval. And we were sleeping in the dirt. And I remember sleeping in the dirt being like, dude, this is so much better than the gravel pit. This is, yes, this dirt thing is awesome. And I remember reflecting on that at one point, and it was so instrumental because it had to do with sort of like the relativity of perception, the relativity of comfort. You know, when you're coming from the gravel pit, the dirt is like awesome, you know, but if you've been coming from a hotel, if you've been coming from, you know, even the soft grass, you know, sleeping in the dirt would have sucked. And I feel like that's true in so much of life, you know, especially in entrepreneurship where things can be hard, but it really depends, you know, I mean, what your baseline is. And it sounds like that's at least part of the lesson of what you're telling us today here.
Yeah, I like your allegory. It reminds me of, it was like, I think it was like a Steve, or it was like a Wozniak quote, and something along the lines of like all startups should be done in non-air conditioned, non-heated warehouses on uncomfortable stools. Um, like you kind of just need to be a little bit uncomfortable in order to succeed and to be hungry and to sort of recognize what success looks like. I mean, when we moved out of our living room into an office, you know, it's this little, first office was this little like 190 square foot thing that we could barely fill our stuff in, but it wasn't the living room, you know, so that was success. Like it was this tangible reward. Um, and yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. I just think that you got to be very mental. You have a lot of mental fortitude to be able to commit yourself to the discomfort that's going to be required to succeed at a startup. If you're going to be taking like a bootstrapping route, if you're raising money, you know, you might be able to afford some more creature comforts right off the bat. But I think there is something very, you see it throughout cultures where you've got the people who are working the hard. You got the Buddhist monks kneeling on concrete for 10 hours a day. You have people who are truly working hard, are not afraid of the discomfort that hard work entails.
I mean, or I mean, that's one way to put it. Or you just have to be desperate, right? I mean,
or desperate. I mean, I'll make no. I was desperate. We were desperate. We were so desperate. I mean, the Sunskis literally came from desperation, but it was this ability to focus your panic into productivity as opposed to into, you know, ruin. And I think that again, it's just, you got to be very mentally focused on, you know, failure is not an option. That's why I think entrepreneurs, like, you can kind of think through all the steps and you can really be like, yeah, that's me, or no, that's not me. And you know, you kind of have to know, yeah, that's me.
How instrumental was Tom to this? Not obviously he's like 50% of the company, but I mean, how instrumental was the two of you guys together? You know, do you think that you would have made it, not just from like a practical perspective of like, you guys, hopefully you guys have some sort of complementary skills, but more like, how much did you guys support each other? How much were you guys sort of like an emotional support network for each other that sort of pushed each other on?
I mean, I'd say it would not have succeeded if we didn't have each other. People who start their businesses by themselves, I have just unbelievable respect for. I mean, people who succeed at businesses if they started themselves, I have an unbelievable amount of respect for, because there are just moments when all hope seems lost, and to not have someone who's in this, I mean, just having someone in the same boat as you is really, really important. Because there's always someone who can say, you know, like, there's always someone that you can turn to. And so usually, like, one of us is freaking out, the other person's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I used to row in college, and it was the same sort of thing where, like, there's different boat configurations, and you can be in an 8, you can be in a quad, you can be in a 4, you can be in a double, you can be in a single. And like, when I would do practices in this thing, because I never raced a single, but when you're rowing by yourself in a single and you get tired, you're just kind of like, okay, well, like, I guess I'll just row a little slower, you know, I'll just let this time slip, like no big deal. When you are in an 8 and you are pulling, and everyone around you is pulling, you're doing it just as much for the other guys. You're doing it for yourself. And you take comfort almost in the fact that everyone around you is hurting just as much as you are. And you actually notice it, because when you think someone isn't pulling, everyone stops pulling, because everyone has to. If you don't feel like you're in it together, it kind of all falls apart. And I think that's the same with businesses, which is that, like, when you have like a small crew of a founding team, when everyone's pulling hard, everyone gets a lot of comfort from that. When you're on your own, you don't really have that benefit.
And so that's awesome. Just putting it out there. Let's go back to Sunski. So we kind of left the Sunski story of like scrappy, ceramic salsa bowls, to suddenly you guys go on Kickstarter, you get $150,000 worth of orders, and what happens then? And can you just walk me through, briefly, sort of like from there to sort of the present day, where you guys are now, what the state of the business is? Talk me through what that journey's been like.
It was actually fairly traditional at that point. I mean, because like we had done 2 years of scraping by, trying to figure out how to do things, and it was really just taking all the lessons that we'd learned over the past few years, and sort of, this was finally the time that we had, we'd already made all the mistakes with Salsa Bowl, really, and so this was the time. This was a fresh slate with a bit more cash to do it right. And so it was exactly the same formula, which was identifying what makes Sunski's unique, which is, it's the authenticity, it's the price point, it's the storytelling, it's the demographic base, it's the timing. Continuing to do a really good job at that, while also always trying to seek out help for what to do next, and always having some lead time in terms of who do we talk to, who's going to tell us what the next steps are. How do we incorporate that? And your planning goes from like, what are we doing tomorrow, to what are we doing to next week, to what are we doing next month, and now it's like, what are we doing next quarter, the quarter after that, and the year after that. Your time frame grows as your company gets bigger, but at the end of the day, you're just doing the same thing that you did when you started out, which is making sure that you stay very focused on exactly what your competitive advantage is, and making sure to only emphasize that in terms of how you build your business. And then always making sure to keep building your relationship network so that you have resources that you can draw upon, now or anticipated in the future. Like I see the business going this way, I should figure out who I'm going to be able to talk to at that point in time now, so that when I hit that point, I've already established this relationship. And I mean, the story actually gets quite boring after Kickstarter to now. I mean, there's obviously ups and downs and twists and turns, but it becomes very bit more routine, which in a business is actually really nice.
I bet, especially after living with your parents and being broke.
Living with Tom's parents, living with my parents, living in an office, living under an office, living in working out of the living room.
And so, what's the state of the business now? Like, I mean, I've heard millions in revenue. Like, what's you guys had $150,000 pre-orders. Like, what scale are you guys operating at, and how big's the team?
We are 4 now, with a couple. We have a couple freelancers. We have some remote people who help out, and then we have like a freelance product designer and a brand manager that's remote. So I guess we're really like 5 to 5.5. We have a warehouse in San Jose that handles all of our orders. We have a PR firm that's really awesome that we work with. We have some sales rep groups, and we're essentially, I mean, it's a pretty big operation from my perspective, pretty tiny by most people's perspectives. And we do a lot of, we do a couple $1 million in sales every year. And we are growing our product line. We have our product line ready for next year now. So we're staying ahead of all of our we're now getting ahead of the deadlines. And that's really like where the state of the business is, which is that we've now kind of hit our stride, and we're trying to just grow between 50% a year or so, as long as we can keep that up, and always anticipating the problems, and making sure that we have the staff that we need to keep doing the workflow, because Tom and I maxed out on the amount of work we could accomplish like a year ago. And this is a new phase of the business. And
what do you guys, so first, how many products do you guys have just right now, and where do you see this business going in 3, 5, 10 years?
We only make sunglasses. It took us a while to figure out that sunglasses was where we should be. That's why I'm saying like focus on your competitive advantage. Um, we have like maybe 20 SKUs right now, 20 different combinations of silhouette and colorway. We're going to have 30 by the winter. We're going to have 42 by next January. And then hopefully we can figure out a way to phase out older styles so we don't keep increasing our catalog exponentially. And then several years from now, I mean, what we really see is I think more retail presence. We have like our own retail location. There's some brands that we really like that we'd like to emulate, like Deus Ex Machina is a motorcycle and surfboard company that just has awesome locations around the world, and like Bali, where they just build these awesome installations and they do art and music and food, and they have some offices there, and the guys just travel around to these remote offices and hang out, and I think what we like to do is we just want to incorporate, because we've been working hard, and the goal for the next 3 years is to figure out a way that Sunski can incorporate into our life, and our life can incorporate into Sunski in a much more organic and fun way. How do we align exactly what we love to do with Sunski? How do we take business trips out to meet our Japanese distributors and also make week-long ski trips out of it? We're trying to move our office out to the Sunset so that if the surf is good on a Tuesday at 1:30, you can just jump out into your wetsuit from the office, run down with your board and go surfing, and then come back and work. I mean, the idea is not work. Like, working is really fun. I feel like it gives most people purpose in life. The idea is to only work on fun things. And so that, I think, is the goal for Sunski going forward, is how do we continue to grow while also just having fun? Because some businesses want to just have some major exit after a grueling period. I think that everybody kind of has to figure out what they want to do, and it took Tom and I some soul searching to figure out what we wanted to do. But our particular goal is to love what we do, and that's really just, there's a period after that.
That's awesome. So, and I want to wrap this up. This is kind of going on for a little bit, but I have one more question. And that is, you guys have had this amazing journey. It's several years in, and one of the things I'm really interested in personally, I think a lot of people are really interested in, is what's the future of the labor market? There's all this talk about, where are the jobs? And I think it's pretty clear if you want to get a job as a software engineer, there's a lot of those jobs. In the future, will more and more people have stories like yours? Is this something that you think is going to become increasingly sort of an increasingly prominent life story, or a career path that not just a few more people, but it is going to become more and more dominant in society? How do you guys think of that for people who are trying to think about what the future holds for for the youth, for jobs and for careers? Where is that going as you see it, based on your experience today?
I don't particularly foresee more people doing what we're doing. I mean, I haven't done the road. I understand how hard it is, and I understand that there's always an attrition rate, and you kind of hit some equilibrium. I think, though, what we do see is not necessarily starting your own business, but I don't know what the term I'd use to call it, but it's like everybody's a sole proprietor of their name, LLP. What you're finding is that people, and I think that this will continue as the labor market is more flexible, as we see, people are switching jobs more reliably. Your experience is more important than your education. People are asking, what can you do, not what have you done? And you see people, everyone's got their own website now with their resume on it. And when they're working for businesses, they're almost like a permanent subcontractor, and everyone's trying to get out of the business as much as the business is trying to get out of them, because they all have these ideas for, how am I going to grow my career? Where is it going? And the way I see the labor market going is that successful people are thinking about themselves as a business, as if you were like an independent contractor or a consultant. And so when you're working for a company, you are simply consulting for them for the period that you're working for them, and then you're moving on. People are not really, you don't see people getting the era of like working for a company your whole life and then expecting them to take care of you in your retirement is done. So
is that a good thing?
I don't know. I cannot answer that definitively. I kind of like the ability to be flexible, but I'm sure other people like security, so it's just a trade-off of preferences. But what I just think what you see is that everybody kind of treats themselves like their own business, and you have your own little business plans, which are your own internal goals and careers and drives, and how am I going to make rent, because your overhead is your food, and your sales are your income from your business, and how do we grow our business? How do I get more money? How do I get a raise? How do I contribute more to this company to make myself seem more invaluable? So when I go have that performance review, I set myself up in the best way possible. So I think we're all half right. I think that we are going to see more entrepreneurship, but not in the traditional starting a company sense, but more just the way that people treat themselves in their own careers.
Sounds like more of a free agent economy.
Yeah. And I truly think that that's the future. I'm going to start running into some other obligations.
Yeah. All right.
This evening.
Michael, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking your time. This is the first episode of Columbia Alumni Radio. If you want to pimp it out to your friends, we're available. You can subscribe on columbiaradio.org. And wrapping this up, I'm Matt Mireles, the host of Columbia Alumni Radio, and I've been here talking today with Michael Charley of Sunski Sunglasses. And he's told us this awesome story of how they built this amazing business and amazing lifestyle. Michael, thank you so much for talking with us today. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely, Matt. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, have a great one, man. Take care.
You too.